I turned to my partner after the curtain came down at the Loeb Drama Center last Friday night and said that what I had just experienced was pure, unadulterated joy from start to finish. That is not a phrase I use lightly, and it's definitely not something you would expect out of a psychological horror story about a ballerina losing her mind. I'm Julian, this is Julian's Front Row Theater, and today we're talking about Black Swan, the world premiere musical adaptation of Darren Aronofsky's 2010 film, now running at the American Repertory Theatre through July 12th. We have a lot to get into. A bold, central adaptational change that reframes the conflict, the best special effects I've ever seen in theater, and a few honest observations about what needs to change before this show finds its next life. This review will contain spoilers. Let's go. Before we get into the production, I want to acknowledge that I am this show's exact target audience. Psychological horror is my favorite genre of film and literature, and it is definitely underexplored in musical theater. The creative team assembled here is one I already had massive respect for. I adore composer Dave Malloy's work, previously having seen The Great Comet, Octet, and a concert presentation of Moby Dick. And I've admired director and choreographer Sonya Tayeh's work on other shows like Moulin Rouge and Gatsby in Cambridge 2 years ago. So yes, I was primed to love this. That said, I also walked into this with some trepidation about the adaptation. Aronofsky's film deals in cinematic interiority. It operates in close-ups and whispers. Nina pulling a feather from her back, a piece of skin peeling from her finger. These are small, impactful moments a film can capture in intimate close-ups. My question going in was, how do you translate this for a theater audience without the benefit of a close-up? Musical theater is not usually associated with subtlety. As it turns out, you don't try to copy the movie. You use the medium of theater to try to do something completely different. We spent the day in Boston before the show, and there were banners for Black Swan throughout the city that had my anticipation building throughout the day. By the time I saw the giant show banner outside the Loeb Drama Center, I was practically buzzing. I wasn't the only one. There were people stopping to take photos in front of it, and I certainly did too. Inside, the theater had signature cocktails for the show and a merchandise selection that included a tote bag, a water bottle, a magnet, a coffee mug, and some shirts that had the show logo and one that simply said, "Perfect." The scenic design by the collective AMP starts fair, with the focus on Nina dancing a solo as she imagines herself winning the role of the Swan Queen. It's a clean, athletic opening that immediately answers the question, can our lead actually dance? She definitely can. More on that in a moment. Now, let me talk about the most significant thing this musical changes from the film, because it shapes almost everything else. In Aronofsky's movie, the artistic director of the company is Thomas Leroy, played by Vincent Cassel, as a manipulative, predatory figure who uses coercion and sexual predation to destabilize Nina. It's an effective layer of dread for the film, and an uncomfortable one, but it places much of Nina's destruction in the hands of an external abuser. The musical throws out that dynamic entirely. Thomas Leroy is gone. In his place is Margot Leroy, a former dancer of the company who rose to stardom through her bold, unorthodox reinventions of the classics. Her version of Swan Lake has no sorcerer and no prince to break the spell. She is played with real authority by Amber Iman and is someone Nina genuinely admires, an icon that she wants to show up for. I think this change is the right one. The film is already incredibly heavy without the sexual predation angle. What book writer Jen Silverman replaces it with is more interesting. The sheer suffocating terror of failing someone you deeply respect. Striving towards artistic excellence, pushing for a standard that you may not be able to reach, can absolutely bring someone to the brink. That's a story worth telling, and it makes Nina's breakdown less reactive and more personal. I'll note that this softening of external pressures applies to Nina's mother Barbara as well, but we'll get to that more when we discuss the script's areas for development. To pull off a story this internal, the score has to do some serious psychological heavy lifting. Dave Malloy delivers what might be my favorite score of his to date, and this is coming from someone who loves The Great Comet deeply. The film leans on Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake score as a constant, haunting through line. Malloy doesn't abandon that. Fragments and interpolations of Tchaikovsky's score are woven throughout the show, grounding it in the ballet world it depicts. But the sonic universe he builds around those fragments is entirely his own. Thumping electronic music for a club scene, percussive, soul-tinged tracks, classic musical theater I want songs, and a horror soundscape of strings so atmospheric you feel it settle over the auditorium like fog. The live orchestra with harp, strings, electric guitar, and reeds sounds exceptional. Sometimes I was wondering what parts of the score were pre-recorded and what were performed live, and I think that is a compliment for a show that's stylistically varied. A number called Star, sung by Nina's mother, hooked me early in Act 1. More on that later. There are two other songs that stand out in particular to me. There's a number where Leroy instructs the company on her vision for the show, describing a blackbird pecking on the inside. It weds Amber Iman's vocal power with the ensemble's physicality in a way that gave me chills. And then there's Scratch in Act 2, which effectively depicts Nina's increasingly fractured mind. Repetitious lyrics, frantic delivery, and mounting intensity. It's harrowing in exactly the right way. Now let me address the question I was most anxious about before I walked in: the body horror. How do you make a theater audience feel what a film can achieve in a single close-up? Major props are due to illusion designers Chris Fisher and Skylar Fox. Longtime viewers may remember my coverage of Masquerade last year, which featured Fox's work. That was impressive. What was achieved here is something else. The film's signature moments of body horror are all present. The feather pulling out of Nina's back, the skin peeling from her finger. I genuinely can't explain how they execute this practically on a live stage. I just know that me and my partner kept turning to each other in disbelief. The show also introduces a character called Doppel, a physical embodiment of Nina's dark side, played by Ida Saki. She first appears lurking behind the rehearsal mirrors in a way that reminded me of the Phantom of the Opera in Angel of Music. Later, she steps out of the mirror world entirely and dances up close and personal with Nina as her mental state continues to deteriorate. It's a smart theatrical solution to what the film achieves with Natalie Portman's split performance. The Act 1 closing number contains the single most impressive theatrical illusion I've seen in nearly 2 decades of live theater going. Without spoiling it too much, Lily dissolves into thin air in a flurry of black feathers. As you go into intermission, the audience is left wondering, was she ever there at all? Later, in a strobe-heavy blackout sequence, the entire company vanishes save for Nina, in a way that was genuinely destabilizing. And Nina's final transformation into the Black Swan, I actually gasped out loud. A show this demanding lives or dies on its performances, and the principals here are excellent. Melanie Moore as Nina. Moore is primarily known as a dancer, having won So You Think You Can Dance, and from the opening tableau with Nina dancing on point, her credentials are unquestionable. Nina is supposed to have perfect technique, and Moore has it. But I'll be honest, when she sang her first solo, I wondered if she had the voice for a role this size. The acting was compelling from the start, but the vocals left me uncertain. By Scratch in Act 2, that uncertainty was gone. Her performance of that song is unhinged and ferocious. Raw vocals with real power behind them, matching the character's mental collapse beat for beat. Moore maps Nina's arc with precision, the initial timidity, the growing confidence, and then the unraveling. It's a complete performance. Jada Simone Clark as Lily. Clark's take on the role is a significant departure from Mila Kunis in the film. Where Kunis plays the role as seductive and loosely destabilizing, Clark is intense, driven, and openly competitive. She wants the lead role, and she has the talent to take it. She opens Act 2 with a stunning dance performance as the White Swan, fiery and commanding. You genuinely believe that this version of Lily might deserve the part over Nina. In the film, I never believed that Kunis was a convincing dancer. Here, there's no question. Amber Iman as Leroy. As I described in the earlier adaptation section, this is a reimagined role, and Iman plays it with genuine authority. The combination of her physicality, her vocals on that Blackbird number, and the attention she brings to the role makes it feel like someone worth impressing. I would argue that the Nina-Leroy dynamic is the emotional engine of this production, and Iman holds up her end of it completely. Mary Eslaminia as Barbara. At my performance, the role of Nina's mother, Barbara, was played by understudy Mary Eslaminia, who was genuinely excellent, particularly in Star, a propulsive early number that deftly captures Barbara's drive to push Nina into the career that she herself never had. As Laminia's delivery of that song was masterful and had me sold on the show early on. I do have some reservations about Barbara in this production, but that is entirely due to the writing and not the performance. The musical softens the character considerably from the film. Barbara Hershey's version in the movie is a source of genuine fear. The birthday cake scene, the locked bedroom confrontation, those moments aren't here in the same form. What we get here instead is a clinging, complicated stage mother with her own thwarted ambitions, which is interesting but not as terrifying. I understand the dramatic logic of reducing external pressures to foreground Nina's inner life. I just wish the book had found some balance to retain a little bit of what made Barbara genuinely scary. Two supporting performances worth calling out. Tori Trowbridge as Beth, the company veteran displaced by Nina, is devastating. Her post-gala number is haunting and well acted. And a later song where Beth paints a sardonic picture from her hospital bed of her and Nina's future choreographing little girls in regional productions of the Nutcracker was one of the funniest moments in the show. Speaking of comic relief, Kyle Brown as AJ stood out as one of the ensemble characters. Now, this is a world premiere, and it shows in a few areas. The physical staging is one of the most immediate issues. Sonya Tayeh's choreography is spectacular, but the Loeb Drama Center stage is relatively shallow. A lot of the larger ensemble numbers feel crowded and claustrophobic. The piece needs more room, more depth, more width, to fully realize what Tayeh is going for. That's not necessarily a solvable problem in Cambridge, it's an argument for a larger venue. The book needs some polish in a few areas. Lily and Barbara, two of the film's crucial characters, feel reduced here. I've already spoken about Barbara, and Lily's competitive dynamic with Nina is well established, but I almost feel like she could use more stage time. And the character of Jacques, played here by Tom Sesma, represents the board's interests and serves as a old guard foil to Leroy's unorthodox vision, but here he feels kind of like a structural device rather than a fully fledged character. Sesma plays double duty as Rothbart during Nina's hallucinatory sequences, which is a smart conceptual choice, but I don't feel like the connective tissue is fully there. Finally, the ending. The staging of Nina's fall is genuinely poetic. Having her hoisted up by the rest of the company creates an interesting stage picture, and I found it moving and resonant having just rewatched the film. But for audience members who don't have that context of what actually happens in the end, I could see how it might be viewed as abrupt and confusing. Some clearer visual language, perhaps using an actual physical set piece like in the film, or having another beat after Nina falls, could make the moment land better for audience members not familiar with the movie. A few thoughts on how the stage version compares to the film for those who know it well. The film and the musical are operating in genuinely different registers, which makes direct comparison somewhat unfair. The film haunts through withholding, intimate and ambiguous, conveyed in silence and close-ups. The musical shows more by necessity. It operates in broader strokes because live theater requires it. The result is something bolder and more frenetic than the film, and in some moments, it reads as more emotionally legible. Where the stage surpasses the film, without question, the special effects. What Fisher and Fox are able to achieve with live bodies and practical theater magic is in a different category of awe than what the film can provide. And Amber Iman's Margot Leroy is, I'd argue, a more dramatically interesting character than Vincent Cassel's Thomas, even if the original has a certain menace that's lost in translation. Where the film holds the edge, Barbara and the more nuanced ambiguity of Nina's deterioration. The film earns its uncertainty carefully. The stage version is more explicit about what's real and what isn't, which sometimes is a benefit and sometimes is a loss. The Tchaikovsky question is worth addressing too. The film uses the Swan Lake score as an ever-present shadow. Malloy doesn't abandon it. The fragments are here, but the tonal universe is entirely his own. A full classical ballet score under 2 hours of Sonya Tayeh's movement language and Jen Silverman's book would have created a tonal mismatch. This needed something new. Black Swan at the American Repertory Theatre is a 10 out of 10 for me, with the honest caveat that I am this show's ideal audience. If you're a musical theater traditionalist who wants clear narrative resolution and conventional song structures, this show will challenge you. If you're a devoted fan of Aronofsky's film who needs Leroy to stay exactly as Cassell played him, the adaptation changes will frustrate you. But if you want theater that is bold and specific and asks something of you, that genuinely unsettles you, makes you gasp, makes you laugh when you least expect it, this is a real achievement. Every production element is pulling in the same direction. Torini's costumes, Bird's lighting, Malloy's score, Tayeh's movement. That kind of coherence is not common in a world premiere. The show will get better. It needs a bigger stage. The script needs another pass. It needs an ending that is satisfying for an audience who isn't familiar with the original film. But the bones here are genuinely amazing and the ceiling is high. If you can get to Cambridge before July 12th, definitely go. I'll link to the A.R.T. ticketing page in the description. And if you're a student, they have some great discounts. It's my sincere hope that this show makes it to Broadway, and when it does, coming back sharper, bolder, and with more room to breathe, I'll be watching from the front row. I'm Julian. This is Julian's Front Row Theater. If you like this review, thumbs up, subscribe if you want more reviews like this, and let me know in the comments. Are you a fan of the film? Are you planning on seeing this? And what shows would you like me to cover in the future? Thanks for watching.